Doing a project based upon whether Lincoln City can survive in League One, both financially and with the current squad and its stadium announcer, I have wondered if you want to answer questions for me.
I would love to, Tamara.
So, how did being a stadium announcer come about?
Well, you've got to go back a long time for a start. I was the chairman of what was then the Lincoln City Supporters Club. And part of my job as chairman of the Supporters Club was I used to have a meeting once a month with the CEO at the time, a gentleman called Jerry Lonsdale. And we used to talk about all sorts of important things like burgers, chips and toilets, stuff like that, you know, fan-related stuff. And then one day he said to me, did I know anybody that could do the PA? Because the gentleman that did it before was moving on to something else, and so they needed a PA announcer. And I said, well, I don't, but I'll sort of put some feelers out and ask some questions in the fan base. And this was about a week before a particular pre-season friendly, and he said, well, we need somebody for Saturday for I think it was Leicester. And I said, well, when I was at school, I did a few school discos back in the day, so I'll come in and do it Saturday whilst you find somebody. So that's basically how I did the first one. And then there was another pre-season friendly, which I did. And then we had the first game of the season, which was a cup game against Burnley on a Tuesday night. And they said to me, can you come and do that one, because we haven't found anybody yet. So I did. And then there was a game on the following Saturday against Shrewsbury, which was the first league game of the season, which I also did. And then sort of since then, I just sort of keep turning up and keep doing it. I don't think actually anybody's ever actually said to me, will you be the PA announcer? I sort of fell into it. And they obviously thought, well, if he keeps doing it, we'll let him do it. And so that's how I got into it. Simple as that.
So was there anyone doing it before when you started?
Yeah, well, when I first came here, which is a long time ago, 1978, a guy called Mr. Stallybrass, he did it. And then he was taken over by Chris Ashton, who I know you know.
Yeah.
And most, all Lincoln City fans know Chris Ashton. He's Mr. Lincoln City, his mum and dad, and have been here since the 30s, making tea and butties and all sorts of things. And Chris used to do the PA announcing along with lots of other things that he did at the club at the time. So my first recollections is of Chris Ashton doing the PA in his own inimitable way, shall we say. Yeah. And then Chris basically sort of moved to a different role within the club on the media side of things, and so he couldn't do the PA as well. And so we had a couple of sort of standing guys. There was a young man who used to do it, and I've forgotten his name, I do apologise, but he was a local postman, still comes to games now. He did it for a while. And Nigel Dennis, who was the stadium safety officer, who sadly has passed away now, he did it for a while, but it was sort of, he didn't really want to do it. It was just like he did it because there was no one else. So that's who was doing it before me. And then I've been here since 1987.
So I understand you're also a supporter liaison officer for the club. What do you find most rewarding about this role?
I think the supporter liaison officer role is a brilliant job for someone like me, because first and foremost, I'm a fan. You know, I've always just been a fan, really, who just happens to be lucky enough to do what I do, both on match days and supporter liaison officer. I think it's the interaction with fans, you know, whether it be at the stadium on a match day, whether it be doing ground tours, which I'm doing one in a minute actually after I finish with you, whether it be on coaches going to away games or even at away games. It's just that sort of friendly banter that you can have with the fan base. And because I've been doing it so long now, most of the people that travel, they sort of, well, they know me rather than I know them sometimes. People will come up to me and talk to me in Tesco's about football. And my wife will say, when I catch her up in the third aisle, who was that? And I'll say, I don't know. It's just somebody who wanted to talk about football, because obviously we've got 8,000 fans that come every week. I don't know them all. I'd like to, but I don't. So, yeah, I think it's the whole fan reaction. And it's great on a match day being able to take a supporter who's never been on the pitch and give them a moment of magic and sit in the dugout and meet the manager at sort of 2:30 on a match day. You can't buy that. It's fantastic.
Yeah. So do you prefer being an SLO or an announcer?
That is an interesting question, because it's a sort of a two-pronged attack. Because on the one hand, you've got the SLO role, which allows me to do things, away from match days, like ground tours and stuff like that. Or I was hosting somebody at the EPC yesterday, for instance. So it gives you that ability to do all of that sort of stuff, which as a football fan is great, because I get to watch footballers kicking footballs, which is all I really want to do. But then the whole PA side of things, I would miss that terribly. I know I would. I mean, there will come a point when I'm physically probably incapable of doing it, but I would really miss the PA, because I've done it for so long now. I have a routine on a Saturday. It never changes. And the thought of sitting here and listening to somebody else doing it is probably a bit strange. It'll happen one day, of course it will. I don't know. It's almost like trying to pick your favourite child. To be honest, it's almost impossible. And to be honest with you, the two link, because the SLO role and the PA role sort of links together, because you obviously do some over the PA, like for instance at the last game of the season, you thank the fans for the season, do the player awards and stuff like that. So they sort of cross over a little bit. Yeah. So that's a politician's answer, I guess.
So what is your lowest point whilst doing the PA job? And leading on to, what is your highest point? Well,
I mean, it's really quite easy, to be honest with you. The lowest point whilst doing the PA was obviously getting relegated back in 2000 and whatever it was, 7, I think it was. I tried to block it out. We had a game here against Aldershot Town, which unfortunately we lost, which meant that we got relegated into the Vanarama National League. And although it had happened to us before, back in the Vauxhall Conference season, I wasn't on the PA then. So, and at the end of the game, of course, it was a full house. There was lots of people here, and pretty much the people didn't want to leave the stadium. They were really upset. And the safety officer came up to me about 20 minutes after the game, said, "Look, we need to empty the stadium. You've got to get people to go home." So I go and try and sort of say to them, "But I know you don't want to go, but you're going to have to go, but have a great summer and we'll be back next season." And people were crying, and it was really very, very sad. And so then 7 years later, to be on the pitch after we'd beaten Macclesfield under Dan and Nick to get back into the Football League, and some people who I'd met that day that were depressed were the opposite. And one guy came up to me. I'm getting emotional thinking about it. He came up to me with his young lad, who was a young lad then, but he was 7 years older now. He was a grown teenager, and they're both crying their eyes out because we were all excited. It's football. And he said, "You said we'd come back, and we did." So it's sort of that's the two balances, I suppose, between it was such an awful day when we got relegated, but a fantastic day when we came back.
Yeah. So what's your best memory of Lincoln City as a fan?
I mean, there's so many. I mean, I don't know how many Lincoln City games I've watched, but it must be approaching 2,000. I mean, look, there's the obvious ones. Cardiff the first time around was fantastic. Winning at Scunthorpe was fantastic to get to Cardiff, because we'd never been in the playoffs before. The Checkatrade Trophy was a day that I don't think any of us ever thought that we'd have. I was very fortunate to be out pitch side with TV cameras in my face and a 40-foot jumbotron, is that what they call them? Which was a bit scary. I've got Danny and Nicky Cowley giving me a jip in my left ear while I'm trying to read the teams out. So you never thought that was going to happen. Looking up at 30,000 Lincoln fans at Wembley was crazy, to be honest with you. Beating Man City 5-1 in over 2 games. Yeah. Hard to believe now, I know, but we did. But I think if you push me into one moment, it's the 82nd minute against Macclesfield Town, down at this end we're sat in now, Terry Hawkridge, to get us back into the Football League. Because that season, when Dan and Nick came, that was the goal. All the other stuff that happened, the cup run and all that sort of thing was great, but the goal was get back into the AFL. I don't think we really thought we'd do it the first year, but that was the plan. And then to have that game where we knew if we beat Macclesfield, we're back in the Football League. Yeah. And then you know, we were sat right behind Terry, and as soon as he hit the ball, you could see it was going in. I was commentating on iFollow with Kev and Chris, and well, I don't know if we made any sense at all. Probably not, because we were jumping around. And then of course I had to announce it as well over the PA. So if you push me, it will probably be that one, closely followed by Nathan Arnold's goal against Ipswich down here, because that is just the greatest moment of my life, or one of them anyway.
Yeah. Like, can you also tell me what's your most memorable like Lincoln game as a PA as well?
I think probably as the PA, probably the Ipswich game. Purely and simply because of all the razzmatazz there was around it. You know, if you remember at the time, we were in the third round, so we'd had a lot of TV coverage already, and then obviously it was on Match of the Day, which was live on the telly at 8:05, just after EastEnders, which doesn't happen to a team like us. And then I remember coming down here, and there was all the TV people. There was about 100 people here from the BBC, and Gabby Logan was practicing her lines when I got here, because they were based in the little PA hut where I'm based at. And I was chatting to her beforehand, and it's all surreal, you know. And then, of course, the game itself wasn't the greatest game until that moment. You know, when Adam Marriott released Nathan Arnold, Nathan goes around the keeper, slops it in the back of the net. The commentary was fantastic by whoever was commentating, and then I can remember sort of running up and down the stand where we were sat, and somebody said to me, "You better announce the goal," because I forgot to announce the goal. I was that excited, you know. So that one has to be right up there. I mean, obviously, away from the stadium, it would be Wembley, but I suppose here it's probably Ipswich. But there's been a lot, to be fair. There's been a lot of times when it's just those important goals or those spectacular goals, but so you've got to pick the ones that mean something, and that meant so much. We wouldn't look where we are now, you know, without Terry scoring that goal. And I see him occasionally at charity events, and I always remind him, well, without you, we wouldn't be here.
So I understand you met Martin Peters, an England 1966 World Cup winner early in your career.
I did.
Can you tell me how this came about?
Well, it was really strange because I can't remember, it was just before France 98 World Cup, and for some reason, well, so the World Cup does like a world tour, doesn't it, before it gets to wherever it's going. And for some reason, on a Friday, it was in the UK. And so the World Cup was here, and they'd done some PR with it in London at Wembley Stadium, and ex-players and all that sort of stuff. And then the EFL decided that they wanted it to go to a football match, but it was a Friday. Yeah. And I don't even know why, but we'd already arranged to play Hereford United on a Friday night down here, and so the World Cup came to Lincoln that night. And when they said they were going to do this, I thought, no, not the World Cup, surely. It'll be like a replica, but it was the real thing. And so anyway, and it was just after Keith Alexander had passed away, so we were having a memorial for Keith as well. But because the World Cup was here, there was like a whole TV cameras were everywhere. They put a big plinth in the middle of the pitch, and they flew the World Cup in at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I remember we were down here and you had to keep all the people back, and they landed it on the 3G pitch, and there was all these security guards got off it and all the rest of it, and you're thinking, what's going on here? And until you actually opened the box, you thought, nah, this is a wind-up. But there it was, and it was in like a glass box. And so the TV guy said to me, oh, can you do an interview with Martin Peters before the game on the pitch? And I thought, yeah, okay. No warning about it. It was literally probably about an hour and a half, probably about 2.5 hours before the game. And I said, yeah, sure. And he said, you know, just like a couple of questions, and you know, about a minute and a half, something like that. Nothing too spectacular that we can put out over, because they put big screens up and all sorts. And so I said, well, is he here? He said, yeah, he's up in the 200 Club. So I went up into the 200 Club, and this is not a word of a lie. I walk into the 200 Club. There is Martin Peters on his own having a coffee. The man that scored the greatest goal, the most important goal in the history of the World Cup, probably, or one of them anyway, one of the four. And there he was sat there. And Joe Muggins walks up to him, shakes him by the hand and says, well, it's very nice to meet you, Martin. He said, and you are? I said, I'm Alan, and I'm going to be interviewing at half-time out on the pitch. And then we sat there for about 20 minutes having a conversation about football. And you imagine that as somebody my age, when I was 8 when we won the World Cup, so I can sort of just about remember it. And there I was talking to one of the guys that actually won it. And of course, the reason he was here is because the only people that can touch it you have to have won it. You can't touch it otherwise. So, and of course, they got it out the box and they put it on the plinth, and he was the only one that was allowed to actually take it out of the box, except for one security guard who had gloves on and all that sort of thing, because it's like solid gold. It's priceless. And so it came to the actual thing itself, and I'm stood there and I'm saying, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Here I am with England World Cup winner, Mr. Martin Peters. And then you think to yourself, well, what do you say? I mean, it's pretty obvious, isn't it? I mean, what was it like scoring in the World Cup? And I said to him afterwards, I said, how many times have you been asked that question? He said, probably about 1 million. He said, but I don't mind because I did it, So, it was one of those very surreal moments where you look back on it now and you think, did that really happen? But my only regret is, because of all the hullabaloo, I never got a picture with either of them. And I hope if there's somebody out there that hears this that was there that night, that has a picture of, because there was a point where there was me, the World Cup, and then Martin Peters right next to each other. I mean, but it's in my head. Maybe it didn't actually happen, I don't know.
So can you tell me where you think the club will be in the next few years?
Well, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because, the club has come an awful long way since those dark days of relegation, and then playing at non-league and then finally getting back into the league, then progressing through League Two, winning at Wembley, getting to League One, and now, 4 or 5 years into us, which is unprecedented in all of our lifetimes at this level to be this. The hardest part now is how do you progress from here? Because obviously we've got to a point now where you're playing, the likes of Birmingham and Bolton and Rotherham, all these teams that have been in the Championship a lot. How do we progress? Do I think it would be easy? No. Do I think we can get to the Championship? Yes, I honestly do. I don't think, if you even look at this season, by the time we get to the end of it, we're probably only going to be 4 or 5 wins away from it. And I think we've all been to enough games to think, well, we could have actually won more games. I know everyone can say that, but you only have to look at it from your point of view. I think the people that are behind the club, from the board to Liam to the staff, all the staff here, are all pulling in the same way. They realise that it isn't we're not going to do a Wrexham and suddenly waltz through the leagues because we've got lots of money. But what we can do is build something really exciting here, with the EPC, with Michael and the coaching staff, with some of the young players that we're bringing through. There's a lot of talent, both on and off the pitch here. So I firmly believe within the next 3 or 4 years, I believe next season we'll be in and around the top 8. And once you get into the top 8, then you have a chance at the top 6. As Charlton are proving this season, you have a good run at the right time of the season, you jump in. And who knows? If other teams can do it, why can't we? So I'm optimistic, but I think you have to temper that with a bit of realism that it isn't. It's a long, slow burning thing rather than something that's going to happen quickly. Because I think if you go up quickly, you come back down quickly as well.
Definitely. Yeah. So finally, do you think that Lincoln City will ever reach the Premier League?
Well, I do get asked this an awful lot, and I sort of think to myself, will I be on the PA the day that we play Manchester United, or in my case, because my other team would be Chelsea, in my case Chelsea? Well, I'll be here the day when Chelsea walk out on this football pitch as a Premier League side. I don't know. I mean, who knows? I mean, it's hard. Obviously, it's getting harder, and you've only got to look at the teams that get promoted out of the Championship. They seem to be coming straight back down now. But Luton did it. Luton just had a golden period, didn't they, where everything went their way, and they just had strikers scoring goals, and they were an unstoppable force, and they got to the Premiership. I think we have to be honest; it will be hard, but you got to have dreams, haven't you?
Yeah, definitely.
As a good friend of mine, Mr. Walt Disney said, and that mouse of his, you have to have dreams. And if you have dreams, then why not? So, yeah, I sort of, maybe that'll be my last game. First game of the season, no, last game of the season in the Premiership.
Yeah.
And then I'll walk away then. I'll say, that's it, I've had enough. But I suspect maybe not for a few years.
Yeah, well, thank you, Alan, for joining me today.
My pleasure, really enjoyed it.
Thank you.